People say you never forget the day your life falls apart. They're wrong. You don't just remember the day. You remember the smell of the air, the song playing in the background, the color of the sky, the exact words that shattered everything you believed. For me, it was a warm Friday evening in May, our 15th wedding anniversary, the day I thought my husband was planning the most romantic night of our marriage. Instead, it became the night I discovered I had been living with a complete stranger. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 52 years old. Until that night, I believed I had a marriage most people only dreamed about. I believed trust was something we'd earned after 15 years together. I believed loyalty wasn't something you questioned once you'd built a life with someone. I was wrong. What I didn't know was that catching my husband with another woman wasn't the biggest betrayal waiting for me. It was only the first crack in a much darker truth, a truth that would destroy careers, send innocent people into courtrooms, and leave one man standing before a federal judge. But on that Friday afternoon, I knew none of that. I was simply a wife getting ready for an anniversary dinner. Daniel and I met 20 years earlier in a neighborhood bookstore just outside Chicago. It wasn't love at first sight. It was coffee. He accidentally knocked over my cup while reaching for a travel guide. Coffee splashed across my notebook, my blouse, and half the table. The poor man looked so horrified that I couldn't help laughing. He apologized at least 15 times, then insisted on buying me another shirt from the clothing store next door. Most people would have accepted the apology and walked away. Daniel asked if he could replace the ruined afternoon too. He invited me to dinner. That dinner lasted nearly 5 hours. We talked about everything: our childhoods, our careers, the places we dreamed of visiting. By the end of the evening, it felt less like meeting someone new and more like reconnecting with someone I'd known forever. 2 years later, we stood in a small church surrounded by our families and promised to spend the rest of our lives together. Neither of us came from wealthy families. Everything we owned, we built together. Daniel worked long hours as a financial advisor. I taught American history at a local high school. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We bought a modest home in a quiet neighborhood, hosted Thanksgiving every year, took road trips instead of luxury vacations, celebrated anniversaries with handwritten cards rather than expensive gifts. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. People often told us we made marriage look easy. The truth is, marriage was never easy. It was simply worth the effort. Or at least, I believed it was. Daniel had a reputation for being dependable. Neighbors trusted him. His clients admired him. He volunteered at community fundraisers. He remembered birthdays. He never forgot to call his mother every Sunday afternoon. When my father passed away unexpectedly, Daniel handled every funeral arrangement because I couldn't stop crying long enough to make decisions. He held my hand through the hardest week of my life. If someone had asked me then whether I trusted my husband, I would have laughed at the question. Completely, without hesitation. Looking back now, that's the frightening thing about betrayal. It almost never arrives wearing a warning sign. It arrives wearing a familiar face. The first change happened about 8 months before our anniversary. It was so small that most people wouldn't have noticed. Daniel started locking his phone. For 15 years, we'd shared everything: passwords, bank accounts, calendars, streaming services. Neither of us cared who used whose phone. Then one evening, while we were watching television, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. Without thinking, I reached for it. Not to snoop, just to hand it to him. Before I could pick it up, Daniel leaned across the couch and grabbed it first. His movement was so fast it startled me. He smiled immediately afterward. Our office updated its cybersecurity policy. They want us locking everything now. I shrugged. That sounded reasonable. Financial advisors handled sensitive information. It made sense. At least, that's what I told myself. A week later, he changed the password on his laptop, then his tablet, then his work email. Every explanation sounded logical. Every excuse made sense. Isn't that how lies survive? Not because they're unbelievable, because they're believable enough. Then came the business trips. Daniel had always traveled occasionally. A conference here, a client meeting there. But suddenly, overnight trips became weekly trips, sometimes 2 in the same week. He blamed a new corporate client. They're demanding. They're expanding. They're worth millions. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He'd never given me a reason not to. Still, There were little things I couldn't explain. He bought expensive cologne he'd never worn before. He started going to the gym after insisting for years that exercise was organized suffering. He replaced half his wardrobe. New suits, new shoes, designer watches. When I complimented one particularly elegant navy suit, he smiled and said, "I figured after 15 years, my wife deserves a husband who dresses a little better." I kissed him and laughed. I had no idea that suit hadn't been bought for me. About 2 months before our anniversary, my best friend Lisa came over for coffee. She'd known Daniel almost as long as I had. As we sat on the back patio, she casually asked, "Has Daniel always been this busy?" I looked up from my coffee. "What do you mean?" "I've called him a couple of times over the last month. He always says he's traveling." I smiled. "His new clients have him working nonstop." Lisa nodded. But something about her expression lingered. She wasn't convinced. Before leaving, she hugged me, then quietly said, "Just promise me something." "What?" "If anything ever feels off, don't ignore it." I laughed. "You've been watching too many crime documentaries." She smiled. "I hope you're right." I watched her drive away. The conversation stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. Not because I believed something was wrong, because for the first time, someone else had noticed the changes too. The weeks passed. Life continued. School entered its final stretch before summer break. Daniel seemed happier than he'd been in months. He surprised me with flowers, cooked dinner twice in 1 week, even suggested we take a vacation that fall. If anything, our marriage seemed to be improving. Looking back now, I understand why. Guilt often disguises itself as generosity. The morning of our anniversary arrived bright and warm. I woke to the smell of pancakes. Daniel was already in the kitchen. He greeted me with a kiss and a bouquet of 15 white roses. 1 rose for every year we'd been married. "Happy anniversary," he whispered. "They're beautiful. So are you." We ate breakfast together. We laughed over old memories. He reminded me how nervous he'd been on our wedding day. I teased him about crying during our vows. He denied it. I reminded him we had photographs proving otherwise. For those few hours, everything felt normal, comfortable, safe. As he prepared to leave for work, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Tonight is going to be unforgettable. Meet me at 7. Wear the blue dress. Love you always." The blue dress. My favorite. The one he'd bought me for my 50th birthday. I smiled all afternoon. Little did I know he was right. That night would be unforgettable. Just not for the reason either of us had imagined. Around noon, he called. "Hey, sweetheart. I forgot my work tablet on the kitchen counter. If you don't mind bringing it tonight, I'd appreciate it." "Of course. Love you. Love you too." Those would become some of the last honest words we shared. I spent nearly 2 hours getting ready. I curled my hair, put on the pearl earrings he'd given me years earlier, slipped into the navy blue dress. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman happily preparing to celebrate 15 years of marriage. I wish I could go back and warn her, but life doesn't work that way. Sometimes, the happiest version of yourself is only moments away from becoming someone completely different. And by the time you realize it, there's no going back. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early. It sat on the top floor of the Grand Ashford Hotel, overlooking downtown Chicago. The skyline shimmered in the evening light, and every table by the windows was filled with couples celebrating birthdays, engagements, or anniversaries. The hostess smiled warmly as she checked the reservation. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Carter." I smiled back. "Thank you." She led me to a quiet corner table beside the windows. A single candle flickered between 2 crystal glasses. There was already a handwritten card waiting for us. "Happy 15th anniversary, Emily and Daniel." I couldn't help smiling. Daniel had always been thoughtful. Even after all these years, he still found ways to make ordinary moments feel special. I glanced at my watch. 6:55 p.m. 5 more minutes. I imagined him walking through the doors carrying that crooked smile I'd fallen in love with 20 years earlier. Instead, 7 o'clock came. Then it went. The waiter approached politely. "Would you like to order a drink while you wait?" "Sparkling water is fine." He nodded and walked away. I checked my phone. Nothing. No message. No missed call. 7:10. 7:15. By 7:20, I called Daniel. Voicemail. That wasn't like him. Even during meetings, he always found time to send a quick text. I told myself not to panic. Traffic. Unexpected clients. Chicago construction. Zad. There were 100 reasonable explanations. At exactly 7:42, my phone rang. It was Daniel. Relief washed over me. "I'm so sorry," he said before I could speak. "The meeting's running much longer than I expected. I'll probably be another hour." His voice sounded hurried, as though he were walking. "It's okay," I replied. "I'll wait. You should order dinner." "No," I smiled. "This is our anniversary. We eat together." There was a brief silence. Then he quietly said, "I love you. I love you too." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for several seconds before slipping it back into my purse. I had no idea every word he'd just spoken was a lie. I decided to stretch my legs. The hotel lobby was beautiful. Fresh orchids decorated the marble floors. Soft piano music drifted through the air. A wedding reception was taking place in one of the grand ballrooms. Guests in elegant suits laughed as photographers captured family portraits. For a moment, I forgot about the delay. Then I saw it. Daniel's Mercedes. Parked near the hotel's private entrance. I smiled. Of course. He must have planned a surprise. Maybe he'd reserved a suite after dinner. Maybe he'd arranged something romantic. I actually laughed at myself. "See, Emily? You've been worrying for nothing." Then I remembered the tablet. Daniel had asked me to bring it. I reached into my purse and felt its smooth metal edge. Perfect. I'd surprise him instead. I walked toward the front desk. The young receptionist greeted me politely. "Good evening. My husband is here for a business meeting. I brought something he forgot. Could you tell me which conference room he's using?" He typed Daniel's name into the computer. A strange expression crossed his face. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't give out information about hotel guests." Guests. Not visitors. Guests. The word lingered in my mind. Before I could ask another question, I heard the elevator behind me. The doors slid open. People began stepping into the lobby. A family carrying shopping bags. An elderly couple holding hands. A businessman talking on his phone. Then, Daniel. He wasn't alone. His jacket rested casually over one shoulder. His tie had been loosened. His arm was wrapped around a young blonde woman. She looked no older than 30. She laughed at something he'd whispered. Then she reached up and straightened his tie with the effortless familiarity of someone who'd done it 100 times before. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't convince myself this was actually happening. She smiled, placed both hands on his chest, and kissed him. Not a quick kiss, not an awkward kiss. A slow, comfortable, intimate kiss. The kind shared by two people who never imagined anyone was watching. Everything around me disappeared. The piano. The conversations, the footsteps. Nothing existed except the two people standing 20 feet away. Daniel opened his eyes. His smile vanished instantly. The color drained from his face. The woman followed his gaze until she found me. Her expression changed from happiness to confusion, then fear. None of us moved. Finally, she looked at Daniel. "Who is she?" Daniel swallowed. His lips parted. Nothing came out. I took one slow step forward, then another, until I stood directly in front of them. "My name is Emily." I looked into her eyes. "I'm Daniel's wife." The woman stared at me, then at Daniel. "Wife?" Her voice trembled. "You told me you were divorced." I watched every ounce of confidence leave Daniel's face. He reached toward her. "Claire? I can explain." She stepped away from him. "No. You explained to her." Then she looked back at me. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I swear, I didn't know. For reasons I still can't explain." I believed her. She wasn't acting. She looked every bit as betrayed as I was. Without another word, she turned and hurried toward the hotel exit. Daniel called after her. "Claire." She never looked back. The revolving doors spun once. Then she disappeared into the night. Daniel slowly turned toward me. "Emily, I'm sorry." I reached into my purse, removed the tablet, placed it against his chest. "You forgot this." He looked down at it, then back at me. "I never wanted you to find out like this." I stared into the eyes of the man I'd trusted for 15 years. "That's exactly the problem. You never wanted me to find out." I turned around, walked out of the hotel. He called my name over and over. I never stopped walking. The drive home felt strangely peaceful. I expected to cry. Instead, I felt empty. By the time I reached our house, darkness had settled over the neighborhood. The bouquet of white roses still sat on the dining room table. I picked them up, walked into the kitchen, dropped them into the trash. Then I climbed the stairs. I opened our bedroom closet. His suits hung neatly in perfect rows. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet nothing felt familiar anymore. At 10:15, I heard the garage door. Daniel. He walked into the bedroom carrying the same jacket he'd worn to the hotel. His shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry. I kept folding clothes." "For what?" He looked down. "For hurting you." I stopped folding. "How long?" He hesitated. "A few months." I looked directly into his eyes. "Don't lie again." His face crumbled. "Almost 2 years. 2 years." The words echoed through my mind. 2 birthdays. 2 Christmas mornings. 2 anniversaries. Nearly 700 days of lies. I removed my wedding ring, placed it carefully on the dresser. "When were you planning to tell me?" He didn't answer. Because the truth was obvious. He never planned to. I picked up one of his suitcases from the closet and set it beside him. "You need to leave." He looked stunned. "Tonight?" "Yes. I have nowhere to go." I met his eyes. "You had somewhere to go earlier. You should go back there." He lowered his head. Without another word, he began packing. 20 minutes later, he rolled the suitcase toward the front door. Before leaving, he turned back. "I do love you." A bitter smile crossed my face. "No. You loved having me. There's a difference." He opened the door, walked outside, and just like that, 15 years of marriage ended with the sound of a closing door. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that kiss. Just before sunrise, I decided to gather the rest of Daniel's belongings. Winter coats, old files, shoeboxes, golf equipment. As I reached onto the top shelf of the closet, a storage box slipped from my hands. Papers scattered across the floor, tax documents, insurance records, family photographs, and something else, a small black cell phone. I'd never seen it before. It wasn't his work phone. It wasn't his personal phone. I picked it up. The screen lit instantly. No password, no lock screen. 3 unread notifications appeared. Transfer complete. $275,000. My heart skipped. A second message appeared. Destroy the paperwork before your wife finds it. Then a third. The SEC has started asking questions. Call me immediately. I frowned. The affair suddenly didn't seem like the biggest secret anymore. I slowly opened the phone, and what I saw next made me realize my husband wasn't just living a double life. He was hiding something that could destroy dozens of innocent families. And somehow, I'd just become part of it. I stared at the screen, convinced I had misunderstood what I was reading. Transfer complete. $275,000. Destroy the paperwork before your wife finds it. The SEC has started asking questions. Call me immediately. The affair had shattered my marriage. But these messages, they hinted at something much worse. I sat on the bedroom floor, the phone trembling in my hands. For nearly 20 years, I had known Daniel as the careful, organized financial advisor who never cut corners. Now I was looking at messages that sounded like they belonged in a federal investigation. I wanted to believe there had to be an explanation. There wasn't. Over the next 2 hours, I carefully searched through the phone. Every message led to another. Every email uncovered another lie. Daniel wasn't simply cheating on me. He'd been running an investment scheme for years, using fake companies, forged account statements. Money moved through shell businesses that existed only on paper. The victims weren't wealthy corporations. They were retirees, teachers, veterans, widows, people who had trusted him with the savings they'd spent decades building. Many of them had invested because Daniel told them he treated every client like family. The words made me sick. I realized something that morning. The man who had lied to me every day for 2 years had probably been lying to everyone else for much longer. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I called the only person I trusted completely. My friend Lisa. She answered on the second ring. "Emily? I need you." 20 minutes later, she was sitting beside me at my kitchen table. I handed her the phone. She read the messages in silence, then looked up. "This isn't just cheating." I shook my head. "No. It's a crime. Lisa took a deep breath. You need a lawyer. And you need to stop touching anything. That was the first smart decision anyone had made in days. By noon, I had hired a divorce attorney. Before discussing the marriage, she asked one simple question. Do you have copies of everything? I placed the second phone on her desk. Her expression changed immediately. She scrolled through several messages, then quietly excused herself from the room. When she returned 5 minutes later, another attorney was with her. We're going to advise you not to confront your husband again. Why? Because this evidence suggests possible federal financial crimes. Those words barely sounded real. Federal financial crimes. How had my life become this? Less than 24 hours earlier, I had been choosing earrings for an anniversary dinner. Now lawyers were discussing federal investigators. The following morning, my attorney arranged a meeting with investigators. I expected skepticism. Instead, they listened very carefully. When I placed the phone on the conference table, one investigator looked at another. We've been trying to connect several transactions for months. He looked back at me. This may be the missing piece. I felt physically ill. My marriage had just become evidence. 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID surprised me. Claire. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Instead, I answered. Hello. Her voice was shaking. I'm sorry to call. I think you deserve to know something. We met at a small coffee shop the next afternoon. She looked exhausted, eyes swollen from crying. She placed a folder on the table. I found these after I left the hotel. Inside were copies of financial reports, luxury hotel receipts, flight confirmations, and photographs. Not romantic photographs. Pictures of Daniel meeting different people in different cities, always carrying the same black briefcase. I thought he was traveling for business, Claire whispered. He told me he managed private investors. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I had no idea. I swear. I believed her. She hadn't been the villain in my story. She'd been another victim, just like me. She agreed to cooperate with investigators. That single decision changed everything. Over the next several weeks, the truth came apart piece by piece. Daniel had spent nearly 5 years convincing retirees to move their retirement savings into what he described as exclusive investment opportunities. The investments didn't exist. The profits shown on statements were fabricated. Money from new clients was quietly used to pay earlier investors, while Daniel secretly diverted millions into shell companies. Investigators later told me they believed he never expected the scheme to survive much longer. That's why he'd been preparing a new life. The affair wasn't simply an affair. It was an escape plan. He told Claire he was divorced because he intended to disappear once everything collapsed. He wasn't leaving me for another woman. He was leaving everyone. 2 months later, federal agents executed search warrants at his office. News cameras filled the parking lot. Former clients gathered outside, demanding answers. His smiling photograph disappeared from the company's website overnight. By evening, every major local news station was reporting the story. I watched from my living room. The same man who had once been introduced as one of Chicago's most trusted financial advisors was now being escorted into a courthouse in handcuffs. I didn't feel victorious. I felt numb, because no amount of justice could return what his victims had lost, or the 15 years I'd spent loving someone who never truly existed. The divorce was finalized several months later. Daniel didn't contest anything. He couldn't. Most of his assets had already been frozen. The house was eventually sold. Part of my share went toward rebuilding my own life. The rest, I donated to a nonprofit organization that provides financial education for senior citizens. It didn't erase what had happened, but it felt like the first honest decision connected to Daniel's career in a very long time. About a year later, I received a handwritten letter. It was from one of Daniel's former clients, an 80-year-old retired school principal. She wrote, "I lost money, but I didn't lose hope. Thank you for choosing the truth instead of protecting someone who didn't deserve it." I cried harder reading those words than I had the night my marriage ended, because for the first time, I realized something. Finding Daniel with another woman hadn't ruined my life. It had saved it. If I hadn't walked into that hotel lobby, if he'd arrived at dinner on time, if I'd never seen that kiss, I might have spent years standing beside a man whose lies were destroying countless innocent people. Sometimes the worst moment of your life becomes the moment that rescues you from an even worse future. People often ask whether I ever forgave Daniel. The answer surprises them. Yes. Not because he deserved forgiveness. Because I deserved peace. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't erase the betrayal. It simply meant I refused to let his choices control the rest of my life. Today, I still keep one reminder from our marriage. Not my wedding ring, not our photographs, not the anniversary card. I keep the handwritten note he left me that morning. Tonight is going to be unforgettable. He was right, just not in the way he intended. That night changed everything. It ended a marriage built on lies. It exposed a man who had betrayed everyone who trusted him. And it reminded me of a lesson I'll never forget. The truth has a strange way of arriving exactly when it needs to, even when it breaks your heart first. So, if you've ever ignored that quiet voice telling you something isn't right, listen to it. Sometimes your instincts aren't trying to make you afraid. Sometimes they're trying to save your life. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, let me know in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Emily's position? Would you have confronted Daniel in that hotel lobby? Or quietly uncovered the truth like she did? I read as many of your comments as I can, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoy powerful stories of betrayal, resilience, and unforgettable karma, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the truth breaks your heart, only so it can set you free. I'll see you in the next story.